Opening the night you promised yourself. It is 10:41 at night. You are in bed, the light is off, and you are awake for one reason. You are thinking about tomorrow. Not the meeting, not the deadline, not the thing you are actually supposed to do. You are thinking about the version of you that will wake up and finally do it. You have met this version before. You have promised him things. He is disciplined. He gets up early. He does not check his phone for an hour. He finishes the project, goes to the gym, answers the message he has been avoiding. You like him. You trust him. The problem is that he only exists at night in the dark when nothing is actually required of him. Then morning comes. The alarm goes off or doesn't, and the person who wakes up is not the one you promised. He is tired. He is persuaded easily. He checks his phone. He tells himself that today is not the right day, that he will start properly on Monday, that one delay does not matter. And the cycle, the long, quiet cycle of almost, continues. This audiobook is for the gap between the person you promise at night and the person who shows up in the morning. That gap is where almost every goal dies, not in a dramatic failure, in a soft, reasonable, completely forgettable decision to wait. You have been told the missing ingredient is motivation. Find your why, get fired up, wait for the feeling. That advice has not worked, and not because you are broken. It has not worked because it points you at the wrong thing. Motivation is a weather system. It arrives and it leaves. You cannot build a life on weather. What you need is a switch, not a feeling you wait for, but a mechanism you flip. A reliable, repeatable way to move from not doing to doing, even when every part of you would rather not. That is what this book is. Not inspiration, a system. The system has a name, the switch method. 5 steps, each one small, each one designed for the moment when you do not feel like it. By the end, you will have something more useful than a good intention. You will have a switch you can actually reach for at 7 in the morning when the feeling is gone and the task is still there. Chapter 1. The Lie About Motivation. The most common sentence in self-help is some version of "you just have to want it enough." It is also one of the least useful. Wanting something and doing something are separated by a distance that wanting alone never crosses. People want to be fit, fluent, financially free, and gentle with their children. They want these things sincerely. They still do not do the work because wanting was never the part that was missing. Motivation, as most people use the word, is the feeling that precedes action. You feel fired up, so you act. The trouble is that the feeling is unstable by nature. It spikes when something is new, when the stakes feel high, when someone else believes in you. Then it fades and the work remains. If your entire system depends on a feeling that fades, your system fails by design. Think of the last time you felt a surge of resolve. A new year, a new planner, a podcast that lit something in you. For a few days you moved. Then the surge cooled and you interpreted the cooling as a sign that the goal was wrong or that you lacked discipline. Neither was true. The surge was always going to cool. That is what surges do. The lie is not that motivation feels good. It is that motivation is necessary. It is treated as the engine when it is really the spark. A spark starts a fire, but the fire is kept alive by fuel and structure, not by more sparks. Most people keep hunting for the next spark instead of building the fireplace. They wait to feel like it. They are, in effect, waiting for a weather condition before they will move, and the weather will not cooperate on the days that matter. What replaces the lie is simple but uncomfortable. You act, and the feeling sometimes follows, sometimes doesn't, and either way the action is what counts. The people you call disciplined are not people who feel like it more often. They are people who have built a way to act when they don't. That is the whole difference, and it is learnable. This book will not try to make you feel motivated. It will try to make you effective without it. That is a quieter promise and a far more reliable one. Chapter 2. Why Motivation Always Disappears. To stop waiting for motivation, it helps to understand why it leaves. The reason is not moral weakness. It is architecture. Your brain is built to conserve energy and avoid discomfort. Action costs energy. Resting costs less. When a task is hard, uncertain, or unpleasant, the older parts of your mind register it as a threat to comfort and produce a pull away from it. That pull feels like, "I don't feel like it." It is not a character flaw. It is a thermostat doing its job. On top of that, novelty drives a lot of the early excitement. A new goal is interesting. The brain pays attention to new things. But once the newness wears off, attention drops and with it the energizing feeling. The work is the same. The feeling has moved on. If you tied your start to the feeling, you now have no start. There is also a quieter mechanism, the gap between your expectation and the reality of the task. You imagine beginning will feel good, or at least neutral. Instead, it feels effortful, and the gap between expected ease and actual effort reads as a reason to stop. The discomfort was always going to be there. You just expected the motivation to cancel it, and it didn't. This is why motivation is a terrible foundation. It is a feeling whose job is to fade, applied to work whose job is to stay. You have been trying to build a permanent structure on a temporary state. The fix is not to find more of the state. It is to stop needing it. None of this means feelings are useless. A surge can help you begin, but you cannot schedule one. You can schedule a switch. So we will build the switch and let the surges show up or not as weather does. Chapter 3. The negotiation before the task. Before almost every difficult task there is a negotiation. You may not notice it because it happens fast and internally, but it is there. The task appears. The mind begins to bargain. "I'll do it after one more video. I'll start once I've had coffee. I'll feel more like it tonight. I'll do a bigger session tomorrow to make up for it." Each sentence sounds reasonable. Each one is a delay dressed as a plan. The negotiation is brilliant because it always sounds rational while it is quietly moving you away from the work. The negotiator in your head is not evil. It is protective. It wants to spare you effort and risk. But it is also terrible at seeing past the next 10 minutes. It will trade your year for your afternoon without a second thought because the afternoon is what it can feel. Catching the negotiation is the first real skill. When you notice yourself explaining why later is better, name it. "I'm negotiating." That one sentence breaks the spell because the negotiator depends on being invisible. Once you see it, you can choose not to close the deal. A useful rule: the more reasonable the delay sounds, the more suspicious you should be. Real constraints are rare. After this one video is not a constraint. It is a stall. The presence of a very sensible excuse is often the exact signal that the switch needs to be flipped. You will not win every negotiation, but you only need to win the first 30 seconds. Flip the switch in that window and the rest of the task loses its power to scare you because you are already moving. Chapter 4. The noise inside your head. There is noise that comes from the world and noise that comes from you. The external noise is the phone, the notifications, the open tabs. We will deal with those. But the internal noise is the harder one. The commentary, the forecast of failure, the replay of the last time you quit. Internal noise does two things. It makes the task feel larger than it is, and it makes you feel smaller than you are. A simple email becomes a referendum on your competence because the noise has been narrating your inadequacy for years. You are not fighting the email. You are fighting the narrator. The switch method begins with silencing that narrator, not by arguing with it, but by withdrawing attention. You do not need to believe you can do the task. You need to stop listening to the voice that says you can't long enough to take one step. The noise is not a fact. It is a habit of attention, and attention can be moved. A practical move: when the noise starts, give it a name. There it is again. Not it's right, not it's wrong, just there it is. Naming turns the narrator from a voice inside you into a weather system outside you. You can act while it rains. You do not have to wait for clear skies. Most people believe they need quiet before they can begin. That is another version of waiting for a feeling. You will rarely get quiet. The switch is designed to work in the noise because That is the only condition you actually live in. Chapter 5. The Switch Method. Here is the system. 5 steps, each one a letter, each one a small physical or mental action you can perform in the moment you would otherwise stall. S. Stop the noise. Cut the distractions and the internal negotiation before they grow. Close the tab. Put the phone in another room. Name the excuse and set it down. S. Shrink the task. Reduce the first action until resistance has nothing to grab. Not the whole workout, the shoes, not the whole report, the first sentence. Make starting absurdly easy. S. Start before you're ready. Begin without waiting for the feeling. Action generates momentum. Momentum generates feeling. The switch is flipped by moving, not by feeling ready. S. Stay through the resistance. When the novelty dies and discomfort arrives, remain. The resistance is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that the real work has begun. Keep the promise you made by starting. S. Seal your identity. Each time you follow through, you collect evidence of who you are. I am someone who keeps promises to myself. Repeat the action and the identity hardens. You stop needing willpower because the behavior becomes part of you. The method is not a slogan. It is a sequence you can run in under a minute. Stop, shrink, start, stay, seal. Say it to yourself a few times and you will find it sits in memory the way a phone number used to. That is the point. It has to be retrievable at the worst moment when your thinking is cloudy and the only thing you can manage is a remembered pattern. We will spend a chapter on each step, but understand the shape first. The method does not ask you to become a different person. It asks you to perform 5 small acts that, repeated, quietly make you one. Chapter 6. Stop the noise. The first step is subtraction. Before you can act, you have to remove the things competing for the same attention. Most people try to act while surrounded by noise, then blame themselves when they fail. That is like trying to sleep in a room with the television on and calling yourself a bad sleeper. External noise is the easiest to remove and the most overlooked. The phone is the great thief of action. Notifications are engineered to pull you out of whatever you are doing. A single glance becomes a 15-minute detour, and the detour becomes a reason you ran out of time. Put the phone in another room, face down, or in a drawer before you begin. Not after you feel distracted. Before. Internal noise is subtler. The forecast of how hard it will be. The memory of the last failure. The fantasy of the perfect conditions. These run as a background stream and you have mistaken them for truth. The move is not to defeat them in argument. It is to notice them and withdraw the audience. I hear you. I'm doing this anyway. The noise does not have to stop for you to move. A clean environment is not a luxury. It is the switch's first position. When everything around you is shouting for attention, flipping the switch is hard. When the room is quiet and the phone is gone, the same task feels almost calm. You have not become more disciplined. You have removed the thing that was making discipline necessary in the first place. Stop the noise is also about choices. Every small decision, what to eat, what to wear, whether to check that message, spends a portion of the same resource you need for the hard task. Reduce the number of decisions before the work. Lay out the clothes. Decide the order the night before. The fewer open loops in your head, the easier the flip. Chapter 7. Shrink the task. If you have ever stared at a blank page and felt nothing move, you have met resistance in its purest form. The task was too large to begin, so you didn't. The cure is not more willpower. It is a smaller task. Shrinking means reducing the first action until saying no becomes harder than saying yes. You are not committing to write the chapter. You are committing to write one sentence. You are not committing to the full workout. You are committing to put on your shoes. You are not committing to clean the house. You are committing to put away one dish. The mind resists large things because large things feel like threats to comfort and time. It barely notices small things. So you hand it a small thing. The resistance, built to fight a mountain, finds a pebble, and has nothing to push against. You have already started before you realized it. This is not cheating. It is mechanics. Once the shoes are on, the walk is almost automatic. Once the first sentence exists, the second is easier. Motion creates motion. The shrink step exists because the hardest part of any task is the transition from 0 to 1, and you can make that transition cost almost nothing. A common error, shrinking the task but keeping the expectation of the whole thing in view. If you tell yourself, I'll just put on my shoes, but really I mean the full hour, the resistance hears the hour. Shrink honestly. Put on the shoes and let the rest be undecided. Often, once moving, you will do more. Sometimes you won't, and a shoe-on walk is still a win over a stayed-on couch day. Shrink until the start is almost below the threshold of refusal. That is the exact size the switch needs. Chapter 8. Start before you're ready. The third step is the one people resist most, because it asks them to act without the feeling they were told they need. Start before you're ready means exactly that. Begin while unready, while unsure, while under-equipped emotionally for the task. Action and motivation are often assumed to run in one order: feel, then act. But the order that actually works is frequently the reverse. You act, and the feeling of capability arrives after you have moved. The runner does not feel like running, steps out the door, and 10 minutes in the resistance softens. The writer does not feel writerly, writes a bad paragraph, and the page becomes less frightening. Feeling follows motion far more reliably than motion follows feeling. Waiting to be ready is usually waiting to feel a certain way, and that way of feeling is not scheduled. If you only begin when ready, you begin rarely, because ready is a feeling that requires the task to already be easy, which it never is at the start. Starting before ready also protects you from the perfection trap. The ready version of you has conditions: the right mood, the right plan, the right morning. Those conditions are a fortress you build to keep yourself safe from trying. Flip the switch by beginning with what you have, where you are, in the state you are actually in. Imperfect starts outperform perfect intentions every single time, because imperfect starts exist and perfect intentions don't. The phrase to keep is simple: I'll begin before I feel ready because the feeling shows up after. Say it when you notice the wait, then move. Chapter 9. Stay through the resistance. The first 3 steps get you moving. This one keeps you moving, and it is where most people fall. They start. The novelty carries them for a while. Then the novelty dies, the discomfort arrives, and they stop, mistaking the normal resistance for a sign that the goal is wrong or the method failed. Resistance is not failure. It is the middle of the work. Every meaningful task has a dead zone, past the exciting start before the satisfying end, where it is simply effortful and quiet. People quit there not because they lack ability, but because they expected the effort to mean something was wrong. It doesn't. Effort is the job. Staying through resistance means making a quiet decision not to negotiate with the urge to stop. You already started. The promise was to the task, not to the feeling. When the feeling leaves, the task is still there, and the task is what you committed to. Remind yourself, this discomfort is not a stop sign. It is the location of the work. A practical anchor. Decide in advance that the middle will be hard, and that hard is allowed. Pre-decided acceptance is stronger than in-the-moment persuasion. Tell yourself before you begin that around the 20-minute mark you will want to quit, and that wanting to quit is simply what this task feels like. Then when it arrives, you are not surprised, and surprise is what triggers the quit. Stay does not mean grind through pain that signals harm. It means remain through the ordinary, expected discomfort of doing something difficult. That distinction matters. You are building the capacity to be uncomfortable on purpose, which is the truest definition of discipline most people will ever need. Chapter 10. Seal your identity. The final step is the one that makes the other 4 repeatable without effort. Every time you flip the switch and follow through, you collect a piece of evidence about who you are. I am someone who does what I said I would. That sentence, repeated, and earned becomes heavier than the excuse. Identity is built backward from behavior, not forward from intention. You do not first become disciplined and then act. You act, and the acting slowly convinces you that you are the kind of person who acts. The person who has kept 10 small promises to themselves has a harder time breaking the 11th, because breaking it would contradict the self they have built. This is why sealing matters more than any single result. A workout you skip costs you an hour. A promise to yourself you break costs you a little of the person you thought you were. Protect the identity, and the results take care of themselves. To seal it, speak the identity quietly after you follow through, not as pride, as fact. I'm someone who keeps the small promises. The wording is less important than the repetition. You are training your own mind to recognize you by your actions, which is the only place identity actually lives. Over time, the switch flips more easily, not because the task got easier, but because quitting would now require betraying a self you have constructed. That is the quiet power of sealing. You stop needing to defeat the resistance. You simply become someone it cannot move. Chapter 11. The phone is the enemy of action. No single object has done more to fragment human attention than the phone. It is not the content. It is the proximity. The phone within reach is a leash on your attention, and attention is the raw material of action. You cannot flip the switch while your hand keeps reaching for the leash. The phone uses intermittent reward. You check it, sometimes nothing, sometimes something, and the sometimes is enough to keep you checking. This is the same mechanism as a slot machine, and it is designed by people who are very good at it. Believing you are above it because you are aware of it is exactly the kind of confidence the design exploits. The fix is not willpower, it is distance. Put the phone in another room while you work. Not silent, not face down. Another room. The friction of standing up and walking over is enough to break the automatic reach for most people, most of the time. You are not proving you are strong. You are removing the trap. If your work requires the phone, use it and close it. Then move it. The point is to make the default state one in which the phone is not in your hand or your peripheral vision. Action lives in the bored, undistracted moment, and the phone eats that moment before you notice it is gone. Treat the phone as you would a loud guest in a library. It is not evil. It is simply incompatible with the thing you are trying to do. Remove it first, every time, as the first move of Stop the Noise. Chapter 12. Dopamine and the Art of Avoidance. There is a reason the hard task feels hard and the scroll feels easy. The easy thing delivers a quick, cheap reward. The hard thing delivers nothing for a long time. Your system, built to seek reward and avoid effort, will always prefer the scroll over the sentence. This is not a moral failing. It is chemistry responding to design. Dopamine is often described as the pleasure chemical, which is misleading. It is more like the anticipation chemical. It rises in response to the possibility of reward, which is why the scroll, the refresh, the next video is so compelling. Each swipe is a small bet on a possible payoff. The hard task offers no such bet. Its payoff is distant and uncertain. So the chemistry quietly steers you toward the thing that pays now. Understanding this removes the shame. You are not lazy. You are a system responding predictably to the rewards available. The fix, then, is to change the rewards and the distance to them, not to shame the system into obeying. Practical moves: lengthen the distance to the easy reward, phone in another room, log out of the feeds, make the scroll cost effort, and shorten the distance to the hard reward, shrink the task so the first small win comes fast. A sentence written is a tiny payoff. Let it land. You are training the chemistry, not fighting it. Avoidance is not the absence of discipline. It is the presence of a better paying option nearby. Remove the nearby option, and the hard thing becomes the best game in the room. That is the whole art of avoidance. Not defeating desire, but rearranging the table so desire points where you want it. Chapter 13. Discipline on the days you hate it. There is a version of discipline people admire that is false. The person who loves the grind, who never struggles, who wants to do the hard thing. That person is mostly a character. Real discipline is not loving the work. It is doing it on the days you hate it, when the reason to stop is loud and the reason to continue is quiet. Those days come for everyone. The body is tired. The mood is flat. The task feels pointless. On those days, the full method is too heavy and you should not attempt it. You should attempt the smallest version. Stop the noise a little, shrink the task to almost nothing, start, stay for a moment, and seal with whatever you managed. On a bad day, a 5-minute version of the habit is not a compromise. It is the win. The person who does 5 minutes on the worst day outperforms the person who does nothing and waits for a good day that may not come. Consistency on bad days is worth more than intensity on good ones, because bad days are most of life. The trap is all or nothing thinking. If I can't do the full session, I won't do anything. That logic hands your discipline to your mood, and your mood is the worst manager you have. Lower the bar until it is reachable, then reach it. The identity is sealed by showing up small as much as by showing up large. Some days the only honest goal is, don't break the chain. Do the smallest possible version so the promise holds. Tomorrow, when the mood returns, you will be glad you did. Chapter 14. Consistency vs. Intensity. People love the dramatic session, the 4-hour study binge, the 2-workout Saturday, the all-nighter that caught up on a month of avoidance. These feel like discipline. They are usually its opposite, compensation for inconsistency dressed as effort. Consistency is quieter and far more powerful. 30 minutes every day outperforms 3 hours once a week, because the daily rep builds the identity and the skill, while the weekly binge builds fatigue and a story you tell yourself. The brain learns from repetition, not from occasional heroics. Intensity also invites burnout. The big session exhausts you, and exhaustion becomes the reason you skip the next few days and the gap erases the gain. The moderate daily practice never exhausts you, so it never interrupts itself. Slow, boring, repeated. That is the shape of real progress. The switch method is built for consistency. Each step is small enough to do daily, even on ordinary days. If your practice requires heroism, it will not survive ordinary life. If it requires only a small flip, it will. Design your discipline to be unremarkable, and it will outlast the dramatic version every time. Ask not, can I do a lot today, but can I do a little forever? The second question is the one that builds a life. Chapter 15. The missed day and the immediate recovery. You will miss a day. Not maybe. You will. The plan fails, the child is sick, the work runs late, and the habit does not happen. What you do in the next hour determines whether one miss becomes a collapse. The danger is not the missed day. The danger is the story you tell about it. I've blown it. I knew I couldn't. Might as well restart Monday. That story turns a single miss into a resignation, and resignation is what actually ends the practice. The missed day is nothing. The story is the catastrophe. The recovery is immediate and specific. The next available moment, do the smallest version of the habit, not a double session to make up for it, not a promise to be perfect forever, just the next small action as soon as possible. One small follow-through after a miss rewrites the story from "I quit" to "I stumbled and continued." There is a well-known idea that a chain of days should never break. Useful but dangerous if you treat the broken link as permanent. Better, protect the chain, and if it breaks, repair it today, not next Monday. The chain is not a monument. It is a habit, and habits are repaired by the next rep, not by guilt. Seal the recovery as identity too. I'm someone who returns after a miss. That person is rarer and more valuable than the person who never misses, because the person who never misses is lucky, and the person who returns is built. You will be tested by misses. The return is the discipline. Chapter 16. Environment, friction, and the path of least resistance. Discipline is often framed as a personal virtue, something inside you, but a large share of it is architectural, sitting in the environment around you. The path of least resistance decides most of what you do, and you can design that path. Friction is the enemy of the good habit and the friend of the bad one unless you flip it. Make the good action low friction, the guitar in the open, not in the case, the running shoes by the door, the water on the desk. Make the bad action high friction, the phone in another room, the feed logged out, the snacks not in the house. You are not changing your character. You are changing the slope. This is why willpower alone fails. Willpower is a finite resource spent fighting friction you could have removed. Spend it on the task, not on the obstacle you left in the way. A well-designed environment means the disciplined choice is also the easy choice, and then you don't need as much discipline, which is the goal. Environment also includes people. The friend who only wants to complain makes quitting social. The friend who is already moving makes starting normal. You do not have to cut anyone off. You only have to notice which environments pull you toward the switch and which pull you away, and quietly spend more time in the first kind. The switch method assumes a prepared environment. Stop the noise is easier in a clean room. So part of the work is external, done the night before, so that the morning self, tired, persuadable, faces a slope that leads where you want to go. Chapter 17. Keeping Promises to Yourself. Of all the quiet skills in this book, this is the root. You keep promises to other people reasonably well. You keep them because breaking them has a visible cost: disappointment, lost trust, awkwardness. Promises to yourself have no immediate witness, so they are the first to break, and the cost is invisible until you add it up over years. Every broken promise to yourself is a small withdrawal from your self-trust. You tell yourself you'll wake at 6, you don't, and something in you learns that your own word is negotiable. Do that often enough and you stop believing your own plans, and a person who doesn't believe their own plans stops making real ones. That is the silent bankruptcy behind most abandoned goals. The repair is not grand. It is keeping the small promises first. Make a promise you can keep it, and let the evidence accumulate. Self-trust is built the same way other trust is, by being reliable in small things. The larger promises become believable only after the smaller ones have been kept. When you flip the switch and follow through, say to yourself simply, "I kept that promise." You are not praising yourself. You are recording evidence. Over time, the evidence becomes a self you do not want to betray, and then discipline stops being a daily battle and becomes a matter of identity, which is the only form of it that lasts. Chapter 18. The Switch in Real Life: Work, Body, Learning, Money. A method is only real if it survives contact with ordinary life. Here is how the switch method meets 4 common battlegrounds. Work. The hard task at the office is usually the one you most want to avoid. The difficult email, the stalled project, the conversation you have postponed. Stop the noise by closing the tabs and the chat. Shrink by writing the first line, not the whole document. Start before ready by opening the file now. Stay through the resistance when the avoidance voice offers you an urgent distraction. Seal by ending the day having sent the thing you feared. Body. Exercise fails not in the gym but in the moment of deciding to go. Remove the decision, clothes laid out, time fixed. Shrink to "I'll drive there," then "I'll change," then the session. Start before the feeling arrives. Stay when the middle boredom comes. Seal by noting you are someone who showed up. Learning. A language or skill dies in the gap between ambition and the first 10 minutes. Shrink to 1 lesson, 1 page. Start before you feel like a student. Stay past the initial confusion. Seal by treating the small daily rep as the identity, not the occasional cram. Money. The disciplined money life is built on boring repeats. The automatic transfer, the avoided impulse, the planned purchase. Stop the noise by removing the buy button from view. Shrink by automating 1 small amount. Start before you feel ready to be responsible. Stay when the one arrives. Seal by becoming someone who pays future, you first. The method does not change per domain. Only the task changes. Stop, shrink, start, stay, seal, the same 5 moves applied to whatever you have been avoiding wherever you are. The saboteurs you will recognize. Before the implementation plan, it helps to name the specific voices that talk you out of flipping the switch. They are predictable and once named, easier to ignore. Each is a form of noise from Chapter 4, given a face. The procrastinator says later is fine, the task isn't moving. Later is rarely fine. It is where tasks go to die quietly. The perfectionist says, I can't start until I have the right plan. The right plan is assembled by starting, not before it. The plan is a fortress built to keep you from trying. The bargainer says, one more episode, then I'll begin. The episode is never the last. The bargain always favors the part of you that doesn't want to move. The victim says, nothing ever works for me. It has not been tried with a switch. The verdict arrived before the experiment. The martyr says, I'm too busy for this. Busy is often a story told to avoid the discomfort of beginning. The busy person who protects the right hour still finds it. The romantic says, I need to feel inspired. Inspiration is a result of working, not a precondition. Wait for it and you wait forever. None of these is you. They are habits of attention wearing masks. Name them when they speak. There's the bargainer again. Naming removes their authority because a voice you can label is a voice you can ignore. A deeper look at each step. Because the method is the spine, it is worth sitting with each move until it is usable on a bad day, when your thinking is cloudy and you need the simplest version. Stop is subtraction before addition. Most people try to add willpower to a noisy room. That fails. Remove the phone, the tab, the open loop, the internal argument. The task does not get easier. The competition for your attention does. With the competition gone, even a hard task becomes approachable. Shrink is respect for the transition. The gap from 0 to 1 is where resistance lives. Make that gap tiny, 1 sentence, 1 shoe, 1 dish, and the resistance has nothing to grab. You are not lowering your standards. You are lowering the threshold of entry, which is the only part that was ever stopping you. Start is the reversal of the waiting habit. You have been taught to feel, then act. Practice acting, then feeling. The feeling, if it comes, arrives after movement, not before. Begin while unready. The readiness was always going to be manufactured by the motion. Stay is the middle game skill. The start is easy because it is new. The middle is hard because it is effortful and quiet. Expect the dip. Decide in advance that the dip is allowed and remain. Quitting in the dip is the most common failure and the most preventable. Seal is the compounding step. Every follow-through is a deposit in self-trust. Every broken promise is a withdrawal. The account balance decides whether the next switch flips easily or not. Protect the balance with the small reps because that is where the identity is built. Real moments, real switches. Theory is easy to agree with. Life is where it is tested. A few composite scenes, drawn from the ordinary texture of a week, not from any one person. The essay. A student faces a 3,000-word essay due in 5 days. The mind says plenty of time, I'll start Thursday. Thursday becomes Friday. The avoidance is not laziness. It is the size of the task producing a freeze. The switch. Stop the noise by closing every tab but the document. Shrink to write the title in 1 sentence. Start before ready by typing those now. Stay through the resistance when the blank page mocks her. Seal by noting she is someone who begins early. The essay, begun as 2 lines, is finished without the all-nighter she has come to expect. The gym. A man intends to exercise, but the couch is comfortable and the session feels far. The switch. Stop by laying out clothes the night before so the decision is gone. Shrink to put on the shoes. Start before the feeling arrives. Stay when the first 5 minutes are boring. Seal by becoming the person who moved despite the couch. The workout happens, not because he wanted it, but because the first step cost almost nothing. The difficult reply. A manager avoids a hard email to a client because it might contain anger or disappointment. Days pass. The silence becomes its own problem. The switch. Stop the noise by closing chat and phone. Shrink to write the first line even if I delete it. Start before ready. Stay through the discomfort of possible conflict. Seal by sending and recording. I handle the hard messages. The client replies reasonably. The feared catastrophe was invented by the wait. The household task. A parent sees the messy room and feels too tired to begin, and the tiredness is real. The switch. Shrink to one item. Start. Stay for 2 minutes. Seal. The room is not transformed, but the paralysis is broken, and the small action often leads to more once motion exists. The savings. A person wants to save but spends without thinking. The switch applied to money. Stop the noise by removing saved cards from the browser. Shrink to one automatic transfer of a small amount. Start before feeling responsible. Stay when the one arrives. Seal as someone who pays future self first. The account grows from a switch, not a sermon. The 30-day switch practice. The method becomes a habit through repetition in low-stakes moments. This is a simple plan, not 30 mini chapters. 4 weeks, one theme each. Week 1, stop. Only subtraction. All week practice removing noise before tasks. Phone in another room. Tabs closed. Internal negotiation named and set down. No pressure to be perfect at the task. Only to clear the room first. If you do nothing else for 7 days but remove noise, you have already changed. Week 2, shrink and start. Now add the 2 middle moves. Every task this week begins by shrinking it to almost nothing, then starting before ready. 1 sentence, 1 shoe, 1 line. The goal is to feel the relief of a tiny beginning, repeated until it is the default. Week 3, stay. Add the middle game skill. When the resistance arrives, remain. Pre-decide that the dip is allowed. Stay for 5 minutes past the urge to quit. Notice that the urge passes and the work continues. This week builds the muscle most people never develop. Week 4, seal. Add identity. After each follow-through, name it. I kept that promise. Watch the self-trust accumulate. By the end of the month, the switch should feel less like a technique and more like a small thing you do without deciding. After 30 days, do not stop. The practice becomes maintenance. The person who finishes is not the person who started. They have a switch where there used to be a wait. The switch with other people. Discipline is often solitary in the imagination, but it lives in relationships. The people around you either make the switch easier or harder, and noticing which is a quiet superpower. A partner who shares the habit is a force multiplier. You flip because they flip. A household where the small disciplines are normal is a household where they are easy. Build that quietly by doing your own switches visibly, without preaching. People imitate behavior they see, not behavior they are told to admire. Conversely, the friend who only wants to complain, who mocks effort, who treats rest as rebellion, pulls you toward the noise. You do not need to end the friendship. You need to notice the pull and not mistake it for truth. Their resistance is theirs. It is not a reason for yours. With children, the switch is taught by being performed. A parent who follows through on small promises raises a child who understands follow-through. The lecture about discipline is forgotten by dinner. The parent who does the hard thing anyway is remembered for years. You are allowed to protect your environment. It is not selfish to spend time with people who make the switch easier. It is maintenance of the one resource, attention, that every other discipline depends on. What discipline is not? To close the practical part, a clearing of misunderstandings, because much of what is called discipline is actually its opposite. Discipline is not punishment. Beating yourself after a miss does not build it. It builds avoidance because the brain learns that effort leads to self-attack. The switch is kind. It begins again. Discipline is not intensity. The dramatic session is often compensation for inconsistency. The quiet daily rep is the real thing. Discipline is not the absence of feeling. You will still not feel like it. The switch works precisely because it does not require the feeling. Discipline is not a personality you either have or lack. It is a set of small moves you can perform, repeatable, learnable, available tonight. Discipline is not asceticism. You are not becoming a monk. You are becoming someone who can be trusted with their own plans, which frees you to enjoy life rather than flee it. The switch method is the simplest true version. Stop, shrink, start, stay, seal. Everything else in this book is a support for those 5 words. The myth of willpower as a tank. Willpower is often pictured as a tank that empties with use and refills with rest. The picture is partly useful and partly misleading. It is true that decision-making and self-control draw on a limited resource, especially under stress and fatigue. It is false that the tank is the whole story, because much of what looks like willpower is actually the absence of friction. A person using willpower all day is often a person who left obstacles in their own path and is spending energy climbing them. Remove the obstacles and the same day requires far less willpower. So the first move is not to build a bigger tank. It is to empty the tank of unnecessary drains. That said, the tank is real. Hard days, low sleep, and high stress lower it. This is why the switch is designed to be cheap. Each step costs almost nothing, so it can be flipped even when the tank is low. You do not need a full tank to put on one shoe. You need a full tank to overhaul your life, which is why overhauling your life fails. Practical implication: spend the tank on the task, not on the obstacle. Prepare the environment the night before so the morning self faces a slope, not a wall. Save the limited resource for the actual work where it belongs. Rest is part of the system. A book about discipline that ignores rest teaches burnout. Rest is not the enemy of the switch. It is what makes the switch flippable on ordinary days. A depleted person cannot run the method, not because they are weak, but because the tank is empty and the friction feels immense. Rest here means real recovery, sleep, stillness, time without input. Not more scrolling, which is not rest but a different kind of depletion. The phone in your hand at night is not relaxing you. It is keeping the noise on, and the noise is what exhausts. Build rest into the system as a non-negotiable input, the way you would fuel a machine. The person who protects sleep protects the switch more than the person who buys a productivity course. Discipline without rest is just slow self-harm with better branding. This also means the missed day is sometimes correct. If the body is ill or the life is in crisis, the right move is rest, not a guilt-driven 5-minute rep that becomes another failure. Judge the miss. Was it avoidance or was it a real limit? The switch serves a life, not a ledger. Discipline and creative work. Creative work has its own resistance because the task is undefined. Writing, designing, composing. There is no clear end, so the shrink step matters even more. Shrink to open the file. Then, one bad sentence. The perfectionist lives here most violently because the work feels like it should be good immediately, and it isn't. The switch for creative work is identical but gentler. Stop the noise of comparison. Shrink to the smallest possible mark. Start before the voice says you have nothing to say. Stay through the dead middle where it feels worthless. Seal by keeping the date with the page, regardless of quality. The quality arrives later in revision, which is a different and easier task than creation. Many creators wait for the mood and produce little. The ones who produce are not more inspired. They have a switch they flip on a schedule, and the schedule, not the mood, decides. Discipline and eating. The body is shaped less by the dramatic diet and more by the 10,000 small decisions about the next bite. The switch applies directly. Stop the noise by not keeping the tempting food visible. Shrink to one healthy choice now. Start before the craving is managed. Stay when the craving argues. Seal as someone who feeds themselves with care. The diet that works is the one you can repeat, which means it must be low friction. Extreme plans require heroism and fail under ordinary life. A small, consistent choice, water before the snack, a vegetable on the plate, a smaller portion is a switch flippable daily. The body changes from the repeat, not the purge. Discipline and parenting. A parent's discipline is tested by the child who will not sleep, the morning rush, the endless small demands. The switch here is about the parent's own reactions as much as tasks. Stop the noise of the internal snap. Shrink to one calm sentence. Start before you feel patient. Stay through the exhaustion. Seal as someone who meets their child without the explosion. Children learn discipline by imitation, not instruction. The parent who flips their own switch, who follows through, who stays calm, who returns after a miss, raises a child who understands these things without a lecture. The lecture is forgotten. The model is absorbed. This is also self-preservation. The parent who never flips the switch toward their own needs burns out and becomes short with everyone. Discipline toward your own small promises is what lets you show up for others without resentment. Discipline and learning a skill. Skill acquisition dies in the gap between ambition and the first rep. The learner wants to be good immediately and quits when they are not. The switch. Stop the noise of comparison to experts. Shrink to one lesson, one page, one rep. Start before ready. Stay through the confusion that is normal at the start. Seal as someone who practices. The expert is not a different species. They are a beginner who did not quit in the middle. The switch is the mechanism that carries a beginner through the dead zone where most beginners vanish. Every skill you admire was built by someone flipping a small switch thousands of times. The long game of self-trust. Everything in this book narrows to one quiet asset, the trust you have in your own word. It is the foundation under every other discipline, and it is built or broken in small moments no one sees. When you say you will do something and do it, a deposit. When you say and don't, a withdrawal. Most people have run a lifetime of silent withdrawals, the alarm they ignored, the walk they skipped, the promise to begin that became a promise to begin, and wonder why their plans feel weightless. The weight was spent. Rebuilding is slow and small. Make a promise you can keep it, repeat. The account refills not with a grand gesture but with the boring reliability of the small yes. After enough of these, a plan you make to yourself begins to feel solid again, and a solid plan is a plan you actually execute. This is why the switch is not about the task. It is about the self on the other side of the task. Every flip is a small act of self-respect, and self-respect, accumulated, is the only discipline that never runs out. The cost of the wait. We have spoken about the switch. It is worth naming plainly what the wait actually costs because the wait hides its price. A delayed task is not neutral, it accrues. The avoided email becomes a larger problem that now includes your silence. The skipped workout becomes a body that moves with less ease next month. The unstarted project becomes a background hum of incompletion that drains attention from everything else. None of these are dramatic. All of them compound. There is also the cost to self-trust, already named, but it deserves emphasis. Every weight teaches your mind that your plans are suggestions. A suggestion is easy to ignore. A promise kept is not. The weight converts promises into suggestions, and a life run on suggestions goes nowhere in particular. The weight also steals time you would have spent living. The energy spent avoiding the task, the checking, the negotiating, the low-grade dread is real energy spent on nothing. Flip the switch and that energy is freed for the actual life. The task done disappears. The task avoided follows you everywhere. So the switch is not only about achievement. It is about reclaiming the attention and self-trust that avoidance quietly spends. The cost of the wait is paid in the only currency that matters, your own trust in yourself. The switch and time. Time is the medium the switch operates in, and misunderstanding time is a common failure. People wait for a large block. I'll do it this weekend when I have time, and the large block never comes because life fills it first. The switch prefers the small block, the 5 minutes, the doorstep moment. Discipline is not about having time. It is about using the time that exists. The 5 minutes before the meeting, the 10 minutes after the child sleeps, the commute. Small blocks repeated outperform the rare large block because they actually happen. The weekend plan fails, the daily 5 minutes succeeds. This is why shrinking the task matters so much. A task that fits a 5-minute block can be done in the life you actually have. A task that requires a free afternoon will wait forever. Size the task to the time, not the time to the task. More real moments. A few more scenes, because the method lives in specificity. The SIDBUSINSS. A person wants to build a small project, but the gap between the idea and the first step feels vast. The switch. Stop the noise of the perfect business plan. Shrink to write the one-sentence description. Start before ready. Stay through the "this is pointless" dip. Seal as someone who begins. The project, begun as one sentence, becomes real over weeks of small reps, not a single heroic launch. The language. A learner opens the app, feels stupid at lesson 1, closes it. The switch. Stop the comparison. Shrink to one word. Start before feeling capable. Stay through the embarrassment of not knowing. Seal as a person who practices. The fluency that seemed impossible is, in a year, ordinary, built entirely from switches no one witnessed. The difficult conversation. A person avoids telling a friend a hard truth because the conversation might wound. The switch. Stop the noise of rehearsal that goes nowhere. Shrink to write the first sentence of what I want to say. Start before ready. Stay through the discomfort. Seal as someone who speaks with care. The friendship given the truth often deepens. The avoidance given time often rots it. The morning. The hardest switch is the first of the day. The phone is the trap. The snooze is the trap. The switch. Prepare the night before, phone across the room, clothes ready. Shrink to sit up. Start before the negotiation begins. Stay through the grog. Seal as someone who meets the day instead of fleeing it. The morning owned changes the rest of the day because the first promise kept is the one the others build on. The quiet reward. People begin this work for a tactical reason, to finally do the thing. They stay with it for a different reason, one they did not expect. The reward is not only the done task, it is a different relationship with themselves. When you can flip the switch, you stop fearing your own inconsistency. The thing you dreaded, your own loss of control, becomes something you can touch and perform. That removes a background anxiety most people carry without naming, the low hum of fear that they might, at any moment, fail themselves again. The switch quiets that hum. And strangely, the people around you change too. Not because you lectured them, but because your steadiness is its own invitation. Partners relax. Children imitate. Coworkers trust. You become a place others feel steadier near, and that role, offered without arrogance, is one of the quietest forms of leadership there is. None of this requires you to be saintly. It requires you to be willing repeatedly to flip the switch. The rest builds itself, one ordinary moment at a time, until one day the task is there, the feeling is gone, and you move anyway, not because you conquered yourself, but because you finally had a mechanism that didn't require conquering. A note on help. This audiobook is a practical guide to personal discipline, not a substitute for professional care. If your inability to act is linked to depression, anxiety, attention disorders, or other conditions, the switch is a useful companion, not a replacement, for help from a qualified professional. Some patterns are too deep to be rewritten by a method alone, and asking for help is its own form of discipline, not its opposite. Similarly, if you are in a situation where the task is leaving danger or protecting yourself, the switch includes the wisdom to act decisively and seek support. Self-discipline includes knowing when steadiness is not the right tool and safety is. Use this book within the framework of keeping yourself well always. The switch across a single day. To make this concrete, walk one ordinary day and see where the switch would live if you had it. The day is where a life is actually lived. You wake, the phone is across the room per the preparation. The negotiation begins. 5 more minutes. You name it, swing your legs out, shrink to sitting up. The first switch of the day is the most valuable because it sets the tone every later promise builds on. At work, the avoided email waits. You close the chat, shrink to the first line, start before ready, stay through the discomfort of possible conflict, seal by sending. The task that haunted the week is gone before 10. At noon, the scroll tempts. The phone is in a drawer. The friction stops the auto-reach. You eat without the feed, and the meal is over without the hour lost to nothing. In the evening, the exercise intention meets the couch. Shoes by the door remove the decision. You shrink to putting them on, start, stay through the boring first minutes, seal as someone who moved. The workout happens. Before sleep, you review not with guilt but with record, the promises kept, however small. The self-trust account grew. Tomorrow's switches will be easier because today's held. None of these are dramatic. That is the point. The switch does not make your day a movie. It makes your day yours moment by moment in the small rooms where a life is actually built. Common mistakes. A few predictable errors appear when people first use the method, and naming them now saves weeks. Mistake 1. Using the switch to suppress. Some hear discipline and decide the goal is to feel nothing and obey the task like a machine. That is not the switch. The switch is about choosing action, not deleting feeling. You can be tired, reluctant, even unhappy and still flip it. The feeling is allowed, it just doesn't get the vote. Mistake 2. Shrinking into nothing. Shrink to a start, not to a loophole. I'll just open the dock and close it is not a start, it is a disguise for avoidance. The shrink must lead, however briefly, into real motion. Mistake 3. Waiting for the perfect emotional state even with the method. Some people learn the words and still stall because underneath they still believe they must feel ready. The switch explicitly overrides that belief. Start before ready is not optional. It is the step that makes the others possible. Mistake 4. Expecting instant mastery. The first 100 flips will be clumsy. You will forget, stall, fail. That is the training. A person who expects to be perfect at the switch in a week quits when they are not, and quitting returns them to the wait. Treat early failure as repetition, not defeat. Mistake 5. Applying it only to strangers. People practice the switch at work where stakes feel manageable, then explode at home, where they feel safe enough to be unguarded. The people you love most deserve the switch most. Bring it home last and bring it home on purpose. Discipline is not cold. There is a final misconception worth clearing. Discipline is sometimes pictured as a cold, rigid control, a shutting down of warmth. The switch is not that. It is a warmth toward your future self, a kindness that says, I will do the thing now so that you, later, am not burdened by my avoidance. Keeping a promise to yourself is one of the most self-respecting acts there is. It is not punishment. It is care, extended across time. The person who flips the switch is not harder. They are kinder to the person they will become. This reframe matters on hard days. The switch is not make myself suffer. It is do the small thing that future me will thank me for. That version is sustainable because it is motivated by care, not by contempt. Contempt burns out. Care, repeated, builds a life. So if discipline has felt cold to you, reconsider it as a warm act towards someone you are responsible for, yourself. The switch is how that care becomes behavior. What nobody tells you about consistency. The part they leave out, consistency is boring and boring is the test. The dramatic start feels like progress. The quiet repeat feels like nothing is happening, but the repeat is where the change lives. The start is a spark, the repeat is the fire. Nobody films the 10th day because the 10th day looks like the 9th, which looks like the 8th. That sameness is the win. Sameness means the habit is holding without drama, and a habit that holds without drama is a habit that will still be there in a year, which is the only time frame that matters. So when the work feels colorless and uneventful, that is not a sign to quit. It is a sign the method is working. The exciting part was the beginning. The valuable part is the middle nobody sees. Stay there. The switch is built for exactly that colorless, uneventful, unfilmed middle. The switch is a gift to your future self. Every flip is a small transfer of ease from now to later. The workout done now is energy for future you. The hard email sent now is peace for future you. The promise kept now is trust for future you. The switch is simply the mechanism of that transfer, performed on purpose instead of by accident. Future you is counting on present you always, and present you usually spends future you's resources on avoidance. The switch reverses the flow. It asks present you to do the small hard thing so that future you inherits less burden. That is the entire ethical content of discipline, and it is gentler than it sounds. When the feeling is gone and the task remains, remember the person on the other side of the action, waiting. You are deciding for them with every flip. Flip it and you give them a gift. Wait and you hand them a bill. The switch is how you choose the gift. The switch and the body clock. Timing is a quiet lever most people ignore. The same task is easier at some hours than others, because the tank and the mood vary across the day. The switch can be flipped anytime, but it flips cheapest when the tank is full. For many, the morning after rest is the cheapest window. The negotiations are fewer, the willpower tank less drained. Front-loading the hard task into that window is not cowardice. It is mechanics. Do the thing you avoid most when you are most able to do it, and the rest of the day is lighter. For others, the window is different, evening, or after a walk or post-exercise when the mind is clear. The principle is the same. Locate your cheap window and protect it for the task you most avoid. The switch is cheapest there, and a cheap switch is a switch you will actually throw. This is not about becoming a morning person. It is about matching the hard task to the hour where your particular tank is fullest. Discipline is partly the wise scheduling of your own limited resource. The switch under stress. Stress shrinks the tank and amplifies the noise. Under stress, the same task feels heavier and the excuse sounds smarter. This is exactly when the switch matters most and is hardest to flip. The mistake is waiting for calm. Calm will not arrive on a stressful day. The switch must be flipped in the noise with a low tank using the smallest possible version. Stop a little. Shrink to almost nothing. Start. Stay for a moment. Seal with whatever you managed. A 5-minute version under stress outperforms the perfect session you waiting for and never began. Stress also distorts the negotiation. Under pressure, the excuse sounds urgent and wise. Name it harder. This is the stress talking, not a real plan. The stress wants you to wait. Waiting under stress usually becomes quitting. Flip early, flip small, and the stress loses its power over the task. Build the capacity to flip under low stress, so that when high stress comes, the pattern is already wired. The person who has flipped 1,000 small switches in calm weather can still flip one in a storm, because the motion is automatic. The person who only tries when calm has no pattern to fall back on. The switch and identity in relationships. We touched on others. It is worth stating plainly. The identity you seal is visible to people who live with you, and it teaches them what to expect from you. A person who flips their switches reliably is someone others can build plans around. That is a rare and valuable thing. Conversely, the person who waits, who promises and stalls, teaches others not to trust their word. This is not about impressing people. It is about the quiet infrastructure of trust that makes relationships stable. Your discipline, or lack of it, is part of the environment other people live in. You do not need to announce your practice. You only need to keep the small promises, and the people who matter will feel the difference without a word. The switch, sealed, becomes a quiet reliability that holds families, teams, and friendships together. The switch for the creative who is stuck. A specific note for the person with a half-finished thing, a book, a song, a project that mocks them from the shelf. The unfinished thing is heavy precisely because it is unfinished. Every glance at it is a small withdrawal from self-trust. The switch for the stuck creator. Stop the noise of the grand vision that overwhelms. Shrink to the smallest possible mark, one word, one chord, one line. Start before ready. Stay through the worthlessness dip. Seal as someone who returns to the work. The unfinished thing is finished by switches, not by inspiration, and the first small mark breaks the spell of incompletion. The weight of the unfinished is mostly the waiting. Flip, and the weight begins to lift, because a thing in motion is no longer a thing you are avoiding. It is a thing you are doing, however slowly. The end of the wait. If you remember nothing else, remember this. The feeling you are waiting for is not coming on schedule. It arrives, if at all, after you move. The wait is the only real obstacle, and the switch is the only reliable answer to it. You do not need to become a different person. You need a small, repeatable mechanism you can reach for at the worst moment. Stop, shrink, start, stay, seal. Those 5 moves performed in the plain light of an ordinary day are the difference between the life you promise at night and the life you actually live. The switch is available now. The task is in front of you. The feeling is gone. That is the exact condition it was built for. The switch and the long view. Discipline is often sold as a way to get things, but its deeper gift is a way to become someone. The tasks change across a life, the essay, the body, the business, the relationship, but the switch stays. You are not building a habit for one goal. You are building a capacity that serves every goal that will ever matter to you. This is why the small reps matter more than the large wins. The win is temporary. The capacity is permanent. The person who can flip the switch will, across 50 years, do more of what they intend than the person who waits for the perfect condition and occasionally achieves a dramatic, unsustainable burst. The long view also softens failure. A miss, seen in a year, is a single gray day in a mostly green calendar. The person attached to the daily perfection suffers every miss. The person attached to the long arc barely notices one, because they are watching the trend, not the day. The switch serves the trend. So build it without impatience. You are not installing a feature. You are growing a capacity, and capacities grow slowly and then hold. The 100 clumsy flips are not wasted. They are the growth. Trust the long arc, and the daily work becomes lighter under its weight. The switch and honesty with yourself. The method fails if you lie to yourself about whether you flipped it. The comfort of pretending, I basically started, when you opened and closed the tab, is a quiet corruption of the practice. The switch requires honesty, because the only person fooled by the pretend flip is you, and you are the one the practice exists to serve. Honesty here is simple. Did you start, or did you perform the shape of starting? Did you stay, or did you leave at the first dip? The truth, told kindly, is data. I shrank, I started, I left at the dip, next time I stay 1 minute longer. That is useful. I'm basically disciplined over a closed tab is not. This honesty is not self-flagellation. It is calibration. The switch is a skill, and skills improve with accurate feedback. Pretend success gives false feedback and stalls growth. Honest, gentle truth gives real feedback and produces it. Be the person who knows exactly whether they flipped it without cruelty. The switch as a practice, not a project. A project has an end. A practice does not. Treating discipline as a project, I'll get discipline, then relax, guarantees its collapse, because the relaxation ends the practice that produced the result, and the result decays. The switch is a practice. Something you do whether or not the goal is achieved, because the doing is the point. This reframe removes the trap of arrival. There is no point at which you are disciplined enough and may stop. There is only the next flip. That sounds heavy, but it is actually light because it removes the pressure of the grand transformation. You are not becoming a god. You are making the next small move. Repeat for a life. The practice, not the project, is what survives ordinary life, which is the only life you have. Build the practice. Let the projects come and go within it. A closing invitation. You began this audiobook at night, perhaps, or on a commute, or in a quiet moment when you admitted the gap between the person you promise and the person you are. That gap is real, and it is not a verdict. It is simply the distance between a wait and a switch. The switch is not sold to you. It is offered free because it costs nothing but the small motion. Stop the noise. Shrink the task. Start before ready. Stay through the resistance. Seal your identity. 5 moves, repeatable, yours to use the next time the feeling is gone and the task remains. The person you promised at night was right about what he wanted. He only lacked the mechanism. Now he has won. The rest is up to the small flips in the plain light of morning, one unglamorous action at a time. Flip it. The switch with hobbies and the things you love. The hardest discipline to protect is often the one attached to joy. A hobby you love becomes a task you avoid the moment it feels like a duty. The guitar sits in the corner. The sketches stop. The thing that was play becomes another should. The switch applies here with a gentleness the work tasks do not need. Stop the noise of the inner critic who grades your playing. Shrink to one chord. Start before ready. Stay past the rust. Seal as someone who returns to what they love. The joy returns not from forcing it but from the simple motion of beginning, which is the same motion everywhere. Protect the hobby from the productivity mindset. It does not need to become a project or a product. It needs the switch, so that on the tired evening you still pick it up for 10 minutes, and 10 minutes of a loved thing is worth more than an hour of a resented one. The switch with difficult family. Family is the laboratory where discipline is hardest, because the stakes are love and the history is long. The old patterns, the snap, the silence, the repeated argument are wired deep, and they fire before thought. The switch here is about your own reaction, not theirs. Stop the noise of the rehearsed grievance. Shrink to one calm sentence. Start before ready. Stay through the discomfort of not getting the last word. Seal as someone who meets family with steadiness. You cannot flip their switch. You can only flip yours, and a steady you changes the room even when no one names it. This is not passivity. It is choosing, deliberately, the response over the reflex. The difficult relative does not improve because you stayed calm once. They improve slowly because the pattern between you changed, and patterns change one steady response at a time. The switch with creative blocks in art and music. The artist or musician staring at the blank canvas or silent instrument knows a special paralysis. The work matters, so the fear of bad work is large. The switch is the antidote to the paralysis of caring. Stop the noise of comparison to the masters. Shrink to one stroke, one note, one wrong attempt. Start before ready. Stay through the worthlessness the blank invokes. Seal as someone who shows up to the work. The block is not a lack of ideas. It is a fear of the first bad mark, and the first bad mark is exactly what the switch produces on purpose, because a bad mark exists and the blank does not. The professionals are not braver. They have simply flipped the switch enough that the bad first mark is expected and unfeared. You become one of them by beginning badly, repeatedly, which is the only way anything good is ever made. The switch and the body of excuses. There is a body of excuses every person carries, a well-rehearsed set of reasons why today is the wrong day. Too tired, too busy, too late to start, not the right time. Each is a sentence the mind offers with great sincerity, and each is, most days, a story. The discipline is not in defeating the excuse in argument. Argument feeds it. The discipline is in naming it. There's the too tired story, and flipping the switch anyway. The excuse does not have to be false to be ignored. It only has to be recognized as a story the mind tells, not a command the body must obey. Over time, the excuses lose their authority because they have been ignored so often they stop being urgent. The person who flips through the excuse becomes someone the excuse no longer controls. That is the quiet freedom under all of this. Not a life without the voice, but a life where the voice no longer holds the steering wheel. The switch and the long quiet. Most of a disciplined life is invisible. The world sees the result, the book, the body, the calm, and not the thousand small flips no one witnessed. This is as it should be. Discipline is not performance. It is private. The long quiet is where the work is done. The morning no one saw, the page no one read, the walk no one counted. If you need the witness to keep going, you will stop when the witness leaves. Build the switch for the unseen moment, and it becomes independent of applause, which is the only kind of discipline that survives a life. So do not wait to be watched. Flip in the dark, as it were. The self-trust you build there is worth more than any recognition, because it is yours alone and cannot be taken by anyone's indifference. The switch with public commitments. Some people keep promises to others better than to themselves, because the external witness creates a cost to breaking them. This can be used honestly. A public commitment, telling a friend you will do the thing, or joining a group with a shared practice, borrows the external witness for an internal habit. The danger is performative discipline, doing the visible thing for the audience, dropping it when unseen. The switch guards against this by being built for the dark, unseen moment. Use the public commitment as a scaffold, not the structure. The real discipline is the private flip. The public promise is only what helps you show up until the private one is strong. Choose witnesses wisely. A friend who will check in kindly beats a crowd that will judge harshly. The goal is support, not surveillance. The switch is yours. The witness is just a helper until you no longer need one. The switch and the small daily frictions. Most days are not made of grand tasks but of 100 small frictions. The dish left in the sink, the message not sent, the stretch not done, the kind word not spoken. None matters alone. Together they are either a quiet accumulation of self-respect or a quiet erosion of it. The switch applies to the small as readily as the large. Shrink the dish to rinse one. Start before ready. Stay for the 10 seconds. Seal as someone who does not leave small things undone. These microflips are cheap and compounded over a life. They are the difference between a self you trust and a self you avoid. Do not wait for the big task to practice discipline. The big task is rare. The small friction is constant, and constant is where the capacity is built. Flip on the dish. The book is only the dramatic version of the same move. The switch and learning to rest without guilt. We spoke of rest as part of the system. There is a quieter difficulty. Many people cannot rest without guilt because they have tied their worth to constant motion. The switch, oddly, helps here too because it makes action reliable enough that rest becomes safe. When the task is done by the switch, not by anxiety, then rest is not avoidance. It is the natural close of completed action. The person who flips the switch and follows through can lie down without the hum of incompletion because the incompletion was handled. Rest earned by action is rest without guilt, and rest without guilt restores the tank that the next switch will need. If you cannot rest, the cause is often not laziness but unhandled tasks. Flip the switch on the task, and the guilt that forbade rest loses its ground. Then rest becomes what it should be, maintenance of the one resource every other discipline depends on. The switch and the years. Seen closely, a disciplined life looks like 1,000 small flips. Seen across years, it looks like a different person, calmer, more trusted, more capable of doing the thing. The change is not a single decision. It is 1,000 unnoticed ones, each too small to celebrate, together forming a life. The young person who starts the switch does not feel different tomorrow. They feel different in 5 years because the 5 years were made of flips instead of weights. This is the patience the method asks. Trust the accumulation, not the day. The day is gray. The trend is green. Watch the trend. And when the years have passed and the person looks back, the pivotal moments were not the dramatic ones. They were the plain mornings when the feeling was gone and the switch was thrown anyway. Those mornings, repeated, are the whole story. The switch and the version of you that waits. There is a version of you who has it together, who rises, who does the thing. You have met him at night. The switch is how that version stops being a nighttime fantasy and becomes a morning reality. Not by feeling like him, but by doing the small moves he would do. You do not become him in a leap. You become him one flip at a time, until the gap between the night promise and the morning action closes. The switch is the bridge. Walk it, one small step, and the person you promise stops being someone you imagine and becomes someone you are. That is the whole offer, not transformation. A mechanism. Stop, shrink, start, stay, seal, performed in the plain light of an ordinary day, until the ordinary day is finally, quietly yours. Final chapter, flip the switch. There is a moment, familiar to you by now, when the task is in front of you and the feeling is gone. You have met this moment thousands of times. Most times you waited. This book has been an argument that waiting is the problem and that the wait is unnecessary. The switch method is not a theory you admire. It is a thing you do. Stop the noise. Shrink the task. Start before you're ready. Stay through the resistance. Seal your identity. 5 moves, repeatable, available in the worst moment because they are small enough to perform when your thinking is cloudy and your willpower is low. You will not do it perfectly. You will negotiate, stall, miss days, and start again. That is the practice, not the failure. The person who flips the switch badly 100 times is still 100 times ahead of the person who waited to feel ready and never moved. Remember the night you promised yourself. The version of you in the dark was right about what you wanted. He was only wrong about how to get it, not through feeling, through a switch. The feeling, if it comes, is a bonus. The action is the point. So the next time the task is there and the motivation is not, do not wait for the weather. Reach for the switch. Stop, shrink, start, stay, seal. The life you keep promising yourself at night is built in those small flips in the plain light of morning, one unglamorous action at a time. Flip the switch.